Hello and welcome to the Dragon Ball Figuarts News Roundup, where I'll be recapping and discussing all Dragon Ball Figuarts news for the months of December 2021 and January 2022. All timestamps and links are in the description. So, let's dive in. Tamashii has continued to release information regarding their new set of tie-in figures for the upcoming film, Dragon Ball Super Superhero. We now have the full details, listings, and a surprise edition, all of which I will get into now. To start things off, we have Piccolo, with a full listing and complete set of promo pictures. He, along with the others, went up for pre-order on December 16th. Of the set, each of which are being sold for $35, Piccolo is the outlier, going for $38. Seems to come out in April this year in Japan, and the US sometime within the following couple months, depending on the retailer, as a general retail release. It will come with the main figure, 2 extra interchangeable heads, 3 extra right hands, and 2 extra left hands. I will link a listing in the description, though he is, at the time of recording, mostly out of stock. In the previous roundup, I focused on comparisons between these figures and their other iterations. Here, I'll focus on the promo pictures themselves, so if you're interested in those comparisons, I'll link that roundup down below. On the left here, we see the base figures that will probably come in package, with a smirking head and clenched fists. In the center, we have a lowered, more braced pose, with a yelling head and more opened hands. On the right, we have the base figure again, but with the special beam cannon hand. That will probably be the hand that is only on the right side and not the left. Honestly, I think the sculpting and coloration presented in these 3 photos is pretty top notch. I really like the way the figure is put together, especially with the facial expressions. And here are our next 3 shots. Once again, from left to right, we start with a mid-air special beam cannon pose, with the same hand and a teeth-clenching expression. In the center, we have a basic front-facing standing pose, and on the right, we have what I'd say is a general ki blast pose, with the same teeth-clenching expression as before, an open hand, and a splayed open hand. Again, I love these images, and I really enjoy the natural shadows the sculpt looks like it's casting on itself. It seems to work quite well, since we may not be getting as much shading and paintwork as one would like with the figure. That remains to be seen, however. Finally, we have this image of a flying kick, with the yelling head and open hand, as well as the figure on display in the special beam cannon pose at Jump Festa, an event I will go over later. So, to wrap up my thoughts on Piccolo, it's absolutely no secret that I'm looking forward to this figure, probably the most out of the set. Piccolo has always been one of my favorite characters in the series, and I think Tamashii has done a wonderful job with the sculpting of this figure, again, especially when it comes to each of the facial expressions. While the previous Piccolo's faces could be hit or miss depending, I think they're done amazingly here, and I just can't wait for its release. Next up, we have Vegeta. He also went up for pre-order on December 16th at $35, and seems to come out in June this year in Japan, and as a general retail release in the US sometime within the following couple months. Again, for modern Figuarts, I think this is a very reasonable price. It will come with the main figure, 3 extra interchangeable faceplates, 4 extra right hands, and 3 extra left hands. Again, if you want to see comparisons between this figure and other iterations, I will have my previous roundup linked below, as well as a listing for Vegeta, though again, he is mostly out of stock at the moment. So, on the left here, we have a flying ki blast pose, with 2 splayed open hands, and a yelling expression. In the center we have a flying pose, with a teeth clench expression, a basic closed fist, and a martial arts type hand. On the right we have Vegeta in a classic pose, with the same 2 hands, but the base facial expression. Now, originally I slightly criticized the figure for its reuse of the Super Saiyan Blue face and head sculpt, as, although I really like them, I thought they may not have been the best fit. Now, however, with these face sculpts, which I believe are mostly original, I think they've done a pretty great job. If they come out at this level of quality, or at least similar enough, I think they'd usurp the Blue Vegeta for best face sculpt of the character, until we hopefully get that Android Saga Vegeta, which I will never let go of. I am waiting. Moving on, we have 2 more shots of Vegeta. On the left, we have a flying basic ki blast pose, with a smirking facial expression, 1 splayed open hand, and 1 open gripped hand. Then, on the right, we have the classic Super Vegeta pose, with the same smirking facial expression, the basic clenched fist, and the thumbs up hand. I think the sculpting work on the body itself was also done very well, and the figure works overall as a great base form, more casual Vegeta, something I generally think we could use more of in Figuarts, though that might be a slightly more niche market. For the final Vegeta images, we have him kneeling, with the teeth gritted face, a clenched fist, and an open grip hand, along with him on display in a basic standing pose at Jump Festa. To wrap up my thoughts on Vegeta, again, I can't wait for this as an affordable, great looking option for both a base Vegeta and a Vegeta as a whole. It looks quite pleasing, and I think will offer a lot of versatility as a whole. And now, we have Goku. Once again, he went up for pre-order on December 16th at $35, and seems to release in Japan sometime this May, and as a general retail release in the US sometime within the following couple months. I think we've gotten used to $35 Goku figures at this point, so this is nothing new. but again, an accessible price for modern Figuarts. He will come with the main figure, 3 extra interchangeable faceplates, 4 extra right hands, and 3 extra left hands. For comparisons between this figure and other Goku iterations, my previous roundup will be linked below, along with the listing of the figure, though once again, there is a good chance he will be out of stock. On the left here, we have a spooked Goku, with the frightened facial expression and the 2 splayed out hands. In the center, we have a classic Goku pose, with 2 martial arts type hands and the base smiling faceplate. On the right, we have a Kamehameha pose, with 2 open grip Kamehameha hands and the yelling faceplate. Right off the bat here, these faceplates immediately stick out. I love Tamashi's more animated, expressive faces, and I think these are great for a new Goku. As long as we're getting a new iteration of a previous figure or character, newer faceplates and expressions are a great way to add to the release's own worth. And I love the expressions chosen here. I think they really fill the gaps left by the Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku, and are evocative of the original 1.0 base Goku. While the Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku had good faceplates, I missed the original Goku's frightened faceplate, and especially its closed-mouthed smile faceplate. And now those are both covered here. Now, I do kind of think that the yelling face looks a bit goofy, but I actually like that a lot. We've gotten a ton of yelling Goku faces in the past, so the overexpression of this one sticks out in a way that I think actually adds to its value in the collection. If their colors and tones aren't too different, I'd really like to be able to swap these faces with the other Gokus, but we'll have to see. Next up, we have 2 more images. On the left, a flying instant transmission pose with a side-eye smiling face, an instant transmission hand, and a basic clenched fist. On the right, we have a flying high kick with the base smiling expression, the splayed out hand, and the basic clenched fist. I find the decision to include 2 different smirking or smiling faces kind of interesting. If this were our only option for base Goku, I'd say this would be a bigger issue, but it isn't. It's one of a long line of Goku figures, and it looks well made in its own right, so I'm actually fine with this. It expands posing options in its own ways too, so that's a plus. And hopefully we'll be able to swap out faces and head sculpts with previous figures as well, so if we can, then that problem's mitigated. And so, for our last 2 pictures, we have a basic stance for Goku, both in the promo picture and on display at Jump Festa, with the 2 clenched fists and side-eye smirk. Overall, this figure seems to be a perfectly fine figure, a fairly standard high-quality Goku. Standard sculpt, nothing special, just fine for what it is. I think its biggest draw is the face sculpting, which, along with the likes of the Ultra Instinct Omen or Sign Goku, look to bring some of the best Goku faceplates we've gotten. We'll have to wait and see how they turn out. And now, for the last of the superhero set, we have the major surprise reveal, a brand new adult Gohan figure, being Ultimate Gohan as he will be seen in the film. He was revealed just before his and the other figures' pre-orders opened on December 16th. Like Goku and Vegeta, he costs $35. He comes out in Japan this July and will release in the United States sometime within the following couple months, depending on the retailer. Like the other 3, he will be a general retail release, and I will include a listing in the description, though pre-orders will most likely be out of stock. He will come with the main figure, 2 extra interchangeable faceplates, and 3 extra hands on each side. Since this is my first time talking about this figure, I will be including a comparison later on, so stay tuned. So, to start off, on the left we have a flying pose with a teeth-gritted face, a martial arts type hand, and a basic clenched fist. In the center we have the parts we will probably see come in box, being the basic stern face and the 2 clenched fists. The same can be said for the right, except in a flying high kick pose. I'd like to note, to start off with, that this figure seems to be following the newer style of articulation introduced by the Super Saiyan 4 Goku and used more recently by the 2.0 Krillin. This is clear with the new shoulder joints, new chest cut, new leg articulation, and new style of knee. After that though, I also feel the need to point out the character design utilized here. Of course, this figure is based off of how Gohan will look in the upcoming film, and is wearing a manga-style demon or Piccolo gi, with the red belt setting it apart from the anime, though Gohan did also wear a red belt in the anime as a child. Like Piccolo, he is also wearing the rounded shoes as opposed to the usual pointed look. However, there are differences between Gohan and Piccolo's outfit, such as the shade of purple and color of the wristbands, both of which I will get into later. Next up, we have 2 very similar looking images, with the one on the left for the Kamehameha pose, with the yelling facial expression, and 2 Kamehameha open grip hands, and the right representing a Masenko pose with the same facial expression with 2 more open hands. It's cool to get both pairs of hands for either ability, and they each add their own levels of posing versatility as well, outside of the techniques. I also think the yelling head is quite well sculpted, and I think maybe the best looking face the figure has, though it's a bit hard to tell. Here we have 2 slightly different angles of the same Masenko pose and display at Jump Festa. Not very much to add here, it's just cool to see him up on display. Now, as previously promised, here are some comparisons. On the left, we have the Great Saiyaman figure with the Super Saiyan head it came with, and on the right, we have the SDCC exclusive version of the original Ultimate Gohan figure. Now, I think the movie Gohan is an overall improvement to the SDCC, or original Gohan on all fronts. I think the sculpt is nicer, the head and faces look better, and it will probably benefit from all the ways Figuarts have improved over the years. Also, note the flipped bang, just thought I'd point it out. However, I don't think it's as clear-cut for me when it comes to the Saiyaman figure. These two, while the same character, occupy quite different roles, and both have their own advantages. However, one thing I will say is that I honestly prefer the Saiyaman's head sculpt, specifically for the hair. I like the smoother, slightly more refined look compared to the movie Gohan's raised, more sculpted hair. However, it probably comes down to the style of the film, and that these are overall two different designs with almost a decade of in-universe time between them. I couldn't fit it in with the other pictures before, but I also have this image of the Saiyaman's base Gohan head sculpt, provided by Funimation. Again, I prefer the sculpt of the hair they used here, and while I also prefer the Buu Saga style expression they used, I don't really know about its execution in comparison. I guess time may tell. Finally, we have the Superhero Gohan and Superhero Piccolo. Here, it's pretty easy to point out the different colors used between the two, which is accurate to the movie designs. From the different shades of purple for the gi and brown for the boots, to the different wristbands, there are more differences between the two than may have been initially apparent. But that'll be all for Gohan, so let's move on. Of course, we once again have images of the unannounced Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 figures. We haven't really seen anything new from these two, so if you want to see more about them as well as a comparison, my previous roundup will be linked below. So, to round off our segment for Dragon Ball Super Superhero, here is the full display for all 6 figures. Overall, I'm really liking the way they all look together, and with the lowered, more reasonable price point for each of the figures, I think this will be a very good set for any Dragon Ball fans. On December 19th, 2021, Tamashii Nations announced that they would be releasing a new figure of Android 21, the character originating from Dragon Ball FighterZ. Created to coincide with the character's DLC in FighterZ and the Dragon Ball game's Battle Hour, pre-orders opened on the Bandai Online Store on January 18th and closed February 28th. Pre-orders also went up on Premium Bandai on February 20th and closed on March 25th. I believe that she will ship sometime between August and October, though I have seen conflicting information, and it probably depends on where the figure was ordered from. Though pre-orders have closed, I will still include the Premium Bandai listing down below if you want more information. She will come with the main figure, 3 extra interchangeable faceplates, 4 extra interchangeable left hands, and 4 extra interchangeable right hands. She will also come with an effect piece and a folded arms piece. This is my first time talking about this figure, so there will be comparisons later, but first, the promotional images. To start things off, on the left here, we have a general standing pose, with 2 splayed out hands, as well as the basic stern face. In the center, we have a flying ki attack preparation pose, with the teeth gritted faceplate, 1 splayed out hand, and 1 pointed finger hand, with the effect piece. In the image to the right, we have another standing, more stylized pose, with the same splayed and pointing finger hand, but with a smirking faceplate and no effect piece. Overall, the sculpt seems clean and definitely captures the likeness of Android 21 from the game. The only detractor, to me, would be the frames of her glasses, which do seem to be a bit thicker than they appeared in the game. However, for the figure, it's an understandable change, and it's not really something that bothers me. I really like the faceplates shown, but I especially like the effect piece. It's very vibrant and saturated, and overall I just think it looks nice. I'm a little bit concerned about the articulation system presented with the torso, but we'll have to wait and see how it works out. While I would usually not be a big fan with the articulation style utilized for the lab coat, it does actually fit fairly well with the character design, so while I think there are definitely better alternatives, it works out well and is consistent with past figures. As one final note for these 3 images, the figure's hands do seem to be coming with the painted fingernails and ring. Next up, we have 2 battle stance images. On the left, we have a yelling faceplate with 2 knife hands, and on the right we have the basic stern face with 1 knife hand and 1 martial arts style hand. I think these 2 images are pretty nice for showing a bit more of the articulation's range, as well as how the bottom part of the dress actually seems to be softer plastic, which is quite promising. We see more of the actual lab coat here with the separated pieces, and another face sculpt with 2 hand sculpts. The faceplate and hands do look really nice, and we also get to see a bit of the shine of the figure's earrings. However, these 2 images do also raise another concern, that being the heels and the shoes. When it comes to articulated figures, one of the most annoying parts to get used to is actually getting the figure to stand, and these heels do kind of worry me in that regard. However, hopefully it doesn't end up being too much of an issue, and the overall shoe sculpt does seem to be well balanced enough to help negate this problem. But yeah, moving on. Now, here on the left we have a forward-facing crossed arms pose with the crossed arms piece and the basic stern face, while on the right we have a flying pose with a fist, martial arts type hand, and the yelling faceplate. I don't really have too much to add here. I like the unique sculpt of the crossed arms piece, and we do get another angle of the yelling face sculpt, though it is still hard to fully see. Finally, we have a comparison shot here between the lab coat version of Android 21 and the original Android 21 figure. First thing I need to note here is the lab coat figure actually does have removable glasses and what appears to be a hand for holding them, though this is the only image we have to show for it. Since these two figures, despite being of the same character, are two completely separate designs, I don't really have a lot to go over, but they are both very good at conveying their respective Android 21 styles. Their hair sculpts are very similar in a lot of ways, but upon closer inspection of the other images of the original figure, they are in fact two unique sculpts. Now would also be a good time to point out that I believe both figures also have articulated hair. Overall, it looks to be a pretty solid release, though not one every fan will be interested in. Either way, I think it worked out pretty well as a figure for the Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour. Now, moving on. I told you I'd talk about Jump Festa. Jump Festa was held on December 18th and 19th, 2021, and with it we got a load of new figure information and displays, including those for the superhero set. As for the other displays, let's get into those right here. Picking up from the display at New York Comic Con, Tamashii showed an updated Frieza Saga display, complete with the entire Ginyu Force, as well as the Frieza Saga Krillin and Goku figures, with the Super Saiyan Goku and Kaioken Goku from before being replaced by just base Goku. It's a pretty cool display, but much more basic than the one at NYCC, which is understandable and perfectly fine. However, it still doesn't change the fact that the Krillin figure shown alongside Bulma is not from the Namek Saga. But anyway, here's a closer look at the display. Of course, we have Gohan, Bulma, and Krillin together here in the back, Frieza, Dodoria, and Zarbon, while we have the entire Ginyu Force posed up on the right side. As you may see in the background of the display, we also have a few little Namek Saga related images. Next up, we have Gohan and Krillin in front of Goku and Frieza. Now, the Namekian Dragon Balls by Gohan and Krillin are interesting because they seemingly confirmed which Dragon Ball would be coming with which figure later on, which turned out to be true. And of course, as I said, Goku and Frieza in the back are most certainly Goku and Frieza in the back. Next up, we have the Cell Saga display. Though this display is also updated compared to the NYCC version of it, it is basically the same as the version shown at Tamashii Nation Online, so I don't really have much to cover on it, so I'll go fairly quickly. Here we have First Form Cell on the right and God's Greatest Mystery on the left. Next, we have the same little Cell Games matchup with an undercompensating Cell and some of the rest of the gang, as well as the good old Doctor. So, there you go. Moving on. Like we saw with the Zarbon and Dodoria figures in the past, Tamashii released two promotional images recreating Dokkan battle cards with their new Krillin and Frieza figures respectively. They're pretty cool images, though they don't really give me much to say. I will keep showing them as they're released though. But that's not Dragon Ball. Well, I figured this would be a good place to include a bit of left field news. On December 18th, 2021, Tamashii Nations confirmed the Naruto line of Figuarts would not just be releasing 3 new figures, but getting a whole new revival of sorts, with another blog on January 11th, 2022 confirming their desire to utilize all the improvements Figuarts has made as a brand over the years to make a truly exceptional Naruto line. And so, I say bring it on. I've been wishing to see a return to the Naruto line for years now, and this is finally a true answer to that call, beyond what most fans were even expecting. So, I'd like to announce the commencement of a Naruto Figuarts news roundup, coming eventually. See, I'd like to cover news when there's enough of it, but also while it's still relatively fresh, unfortunate production mishaps notwithstanding. So I'm kind of teetering between the idea of releasing a Naruto roundup now, or just waiting until more information or other figures are announced. They might have just been. We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, I can confirm that it is going to happen. I'm just not so sure when. But let's move on. I'll take just a moment to confirm that I believe the pop-up shop in Barcelona is still open, so if you're anywhere nearby or willing to take the drive or flight, it is still there. However, I have absolutely no idea when it will end, so be somewhat cautious about that. Any information on pop-up shops, their dates and locations can be found on the Tamashii Nation's Instagram or website, both linked in the description. Finally, the Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour 2022 was held on February 18th and 19th in the Americas, which was February 19th and 20th in Japan. This was the event that brought the Android 21 figure, along with a lot of other information regarding Dragon Ball video games in general. In the description, I will leave a link to Tamashi's special Battle Hour page, which included a couple very cool promotional videos and a 360 view of the Android 21 figure, which I did not have time to go over. I highly recommend you check them out. And that will be all for our Dragon Ball Figuarts News Roundup. If we could all pretend that this came out in January of 2022, that'd be great. But in all seriousness, thank you all so much for the support on this series. I really had no idea it'd pick up this much steam, and I'm so grateful. I apologize that the release schedule has gotten increasingly rocky, but life just keeps on running and sometimes it's a bit hard to keep up. I really do hope to try and keep things on track this year though, so I hope I can keep this good thing going. But with that, I hope this was informative and maybe even a little entertaining. And I hope you all have a good day, good night, good week, good anything. And I'll catch you all later. Peace.